Hello there. Welcome back to Asia Now on CNA. I'm Christine Chan. In Malaysia, the coalition in the eastern state of Sabah, which the Prime Minister has placed his support in, they've taken the state elections this weekend by securing a simple majority. They will therefore form the next state government. The U.S. President Donald Trump has nominated Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court. And by doing so, he's turned up the political heat with the presidential election 37 days away. Singapore's Foreign Affairs Minister, Vivian Balakrishnan, has called for reforms in global organizations in the face of changing realities. The state elections in the East Malaysian state of Sabah are now over, but the wrangling for the position of Chief Minister has begun, and there appear to be two frontrunners. Sabah Bersatu Malaysia's Haji Jinor and UMNO's Sabah Chief Bung Mokhtar. They are both from the coalition known as Gabungan Rakyat Sabah. This is the winning coalition that was backed by Malaysia's Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin. Afifa Arifin tells us if that narrow majority just secured by GRS might be enough to ensure a stable state government.
Since last night, when the results started trickling in, it was a very anxious time for the Gabungan Rakyat Sabah parties. The unofficial results came in at 9:30, and that was when they declared that they had secured the simple majority. Official results came in slightly before midnight. So that's just about a two-seat majority between Gabungan Rakyat Sabah as well as the Warisan Plus Alliance. And as we know, party hopping is something that has plagued Sabah's politics for years. That's exactly how the former government got into power back in 2018, and that's exactly how they fell, recently. That's why there is this state election. As of this moment, we haven't actually heard much from the Warisan Chief Shafi Abdal yesterday, even though reporters were outside his house until the wee early hours of the morning. He did not come out to give a statement. On the Gabungan Rakyat side, they are very confident that they have the majority, and so there won't be any sort of defections, as we know of now, which is why they are rushing to choose a chief minister candidate and to get that person sworn in as soon as possible.
Let's speak now with Professor James Chin. He's the director of the Asia Institute at the University of Tasmania. James, explain something for our viewers around the world. In the state of Sabah, do you see this as representing a shift in the balance of power?
No, I don't. I think you have to understand that the voters in Sabah and Sarawak, in terms of the voting pattern, the way they come to the decision to vote is very different. So in this case, we're talking about state election, which means that they will concentrate on state issues. So the federal angle does not really come in. So for example, we know that a few days before polling, Anwar made a major announcement in Kuala Lumpur that he was planning to take over the government. That had no impact at all on the voters in Sabah. So the short answer is no. The way people vote in Sabah primarily rests with local issues, especially local personalities.
So even so, on the state level, it seems that the incumbent party, just before the polls, they may have been a little surprised at this outcome. What are those state issues that were of concern to Sabahans?
So the way this election was framed was basically the state champions, Warisan Plus, was supposedly fighting against a party, UMNO, PRS, GBS. All these parties were supposedly supported by the federal government. In other words, it was local versus outsiders. And here when they talk about outsiders, they're talking about Malaya. They're not talking about non-Malaysians. So that was how the debate was framed. But I have to say, although the debate was framed as us versus outsiders, in the Kadazan Dusun area, it was slightly different. In the Kadazan Dusun area, many of the Kadazan Dusun saw Warisan as a party, what they call a PTI party. In other words, one of the problems we face in Sabah is a large number of illegal immigrants. So in the Kadazan Dusun area, it would appear that Warisan, the incumbent, lost a lot of votes because of this issue. So it really is a combination of local issues plus personality, plus the issue of illegal immigrants that really decided the outcome of this election. The other key issue in this election, of course, was something that Sabah has faced and also Sarawak has faced, which is the last-minute vote buying. It is my understanding that there was a lot of money changing hands last night, early this morning, and I suspect that was another key factor in yesterday's vote.
Fascinating. Now, you alluded to Mr. Anwar Ibrahim. I'll come to him in a while, but it seems that the Malaysian Prime Minister would want very much to have these state election results solidify his position, if not at least the optics of his position on the federal government stage. So do you think this is going to impact the calling of any snap polls before 2023?
I think over the short term, there'll be less pressure on him to call for nationwide polls because he did very well. One of the very unusual things in this election was that if you had gone around Sabah, you would see that all the posters there were mostly with Muhyiddin's picture. The reason is because the Barisan Nasional and the GBS and GRS and the other groups, they couldn't agree on who the chief minister was. So they ended up using the poster of Muhyiddin. So Muhyiddin can claim credit that he was a major factor. But over the long term, I think there will be tremendous pressure on Muhyiddin to call a general election because this is what UMNO wants. Muhyiddin's Bersatu Party is probably the weakest link in the federal government, so they will try to delay as much as possible.
And how does all this affect the status of the opposition leader, Mr. Anwar Ibrahim?
Mr. Ibrahim's position is quite difficult now, because he was trying to take over the government based on defections. In other words, the only person who can give him a chance to be the prime minister is the king. He has to convince the king that he has the numbers, and that was exactly what happened in February this year. The problem is that the king has just announced, or rather the palace has just announced that the king is in a hospital and he will not be meeting anybody next week for the whole week. So the rumor mill in Kuala Lumpur is that it looks like the royals do not want to get involved in another political process to pick the next prime minister. So they're taking a wait-and-see attitude. So everything will be dependent on what Anwar can do this coming week.
Now, some very important context there. It's such a complex situation. Professor James Chin, thank you for your analysis. Professor Chin is the director of the Asia Institute with the University of Tasmania. Now, let's take